The environment is an investment. And really, I'm surprised how many people don't talk about this. It's interesting because, especially in the farming industry, and really, I had some professors at college, they shared their opinion on the environmental ideology, I guess. I don't know how to describe it, but I think it's gone too far and have taken people from what it really is, an investment. Almost like exactly like a financial investment. And people have started making it from an investment to an ideology, and the gap is just getting narrower. And I really want to just talk about why it is an investment, and there's a lot of crap out there and people screaming at you to save the environment on all this stuff. But really, I wanted to talk about one main point that I wish more people in investment specifically, especially when it comes to some environmental people. Some of them they're out there. But the thing is that I kind of just wanted to share my reasoning on why helping the environment is an investment. And it really starts with the air and not necessarily your cars, because cars are a necessary thing. And if you think about the amount of stuff that goes into making an electric battery, it's actually just as or even more dangerous for the environment than a gas car. And it's kind of funny because they say that electric cars are for the environment, but then you see the amount of toxic cobalt and chemicals and the amount of acid that goes into the bottom of those cars to have those giant batteries. Those batteries don't last forever, and you gotta throw them out because you can't reuse acidic batteries once they're blown. And really, there needs to be more innovation that I don't think anybody's really talking about. There's so much opportunity for investments in new companies, especially for batteries, since right now Trump is trying to get all these tariffs on China and all these things. But really, I think the whole point is to have your investments independent of a country. And that is why I think battery technology is going to be a huge thing in the future. Not really because it saves the environment, but because it is just a necessary thing to succeed the next piece of technology that really is an investment. And the other part is also where our food is coming from, because right now all this farming is really polluting the earth, not in the air actually, but in the soil. Because if you think about the soil is our asset, right? And it decreases in value the more we take the resources out. But how do the resources actually get generated in to keep that soil? Because it's not the fertilizer. The fertilizer is for the crops on top. And the fertilizer is good if it's natural, but the whole point is the soil underneath that really is the thing that I think the farming companies and people need to realize more, is the concept of regenerative farming. And it really starts by the trees, because if you don't have that bacterial microbiome in the soil, every time you farm, you deplete the soil and then you have to move on to another plot of land. And that's not a good thing, because once soil is dead, you can't just throw water on it and expect it to grow. So you need trees, and there's actually these different farming concepts that actually increase the yield of farming significantly. That is actually an investment, regardless of what some environmental people say, but I think they have good intentions. And it sucks what politics has done, especially to the whole environmental ideology. I think that entire thing is ridiculous. I think we need to think about the planet through the lens of investors that really ties into why it should be with investing, because like I said before, it's the soil underneath and the bacterial microbiome, and for that to function, you need trees and animals. And the fact that we're using all these pesticides on the food is crazy, because there were actually some studies done. I gotta look them up and link them in the description because I don't want to be inaccurate. But really, they found like that if you had like chickens in the farming like place with the crops, and their poop and the seeds that they lay down and all these things while eating the bugs, actually increased the crop yield by speeding up the amount of time it would take. So if you think about it from the investor's point of view, if you can speed up the rate at your crops and not deplete the land, that's an investment. And it's tough that nobody talks about this. I'm not a scientist, so for me, I'm thinking about it from monetary perspective of how this could yield more and actually make the earth better. Because a lot of the thing why crops need so much water is because there's nothing underneath the crops to hold the water in. And that's why even in like California, the dryland areas where it's really dry, the reason they have to use a ton of water is because in the soil it just seeps down and goes into those groundwater areas, but they actually draw the water to throw it on top. So it's creating a constant loop that does nothing. And the best way that I think it really is gonna do something is if you have trees every other specific measurement in the crop. So say I lay out a field, I'll have trees in specific spots, and I'll have the roots in mycelium underneath the crops, because the roots in mycelium don't actually eat away from the crops. And if you think about the biodiversity, how it goes in a circle of how it starts with the tree, you got the mycelium bacteria, and they all feed into each other, creating the microbiome. And you can actually apply this to farming to increase your crop yield by having trees and mycelium underneath the crops. You could have this top layer of soil, we have the crops, they have the roots, and then underneath you have the tree roots, and you can actually see the things on this. And there's a couple of videos on YouTube, I need to find them to link them in the description, but it's that investment that nobody talks about in our food, especially with all these dangerous chemicals. I think we can easily get rid of it and increase our crop yield by just using what the earth already has. I mean, our farming has gone from all natural stuff to completely artificial, and now we're creating this, in biology terms, the artificial selection of different crops that have to mutate due to that stuff. And same thing with the bugs. And you can get rid of that entire process with just Mother Nature. I mean, it's crazy that farmers don't do this. I mean, it's the trees in there, and you're gonna need smaller but more machinery, because you're gonna have those trees blocking the areas. So when harvest comes, it's gonna be a little bit trickier. But we can actually optimize this for trees. Actually, there are trees where you can actually get them to grow straight down and then spread out, instead of just the roots covering the top. There are different strategies for this. You could ask, I'm not sure the name of the scientist. There's so many different types of scientists for the different ones. I'm not sure of the name, but I was just in biology, well, not biology class, that's from high school. It wasn't science class, this was in college, and we really had the discussion of, well, is saving the environment an investment? Saying that isn't gonna do anything, so we need to come up with solutions that isn't gonna take away from anybody. Because I really think some of the ideologies you gotta take from somebody to help. And you don't need to do that, especially when it comes to nature. And the thing is with those trees, they're gonna take time for them to grow. But think about it years down the line, if you have that crop yield going up and the soil constantly replenishes itself because you have the rainwater coming in with the bacteria and stuff dissolved, because rainwater isn't pure. It has bacteria and different things that actually rain down and go into the trees and soil. That actually makes the ground soil, because the ground is just a bunch of silicon, which is basically just, and it's a bunch of different blends, but it's like more than 70% silicon and the rest oxygen and a small amount of different minerals. And so the way the world is able to replenish that soil is with the bacteria and the rain, along with different seeds which come from the birds and stuff, which also need to be a big investment. There was actually the crop yields of those where they had large influxes of birds actually went up, because you have that natural bird fertilizer that had those seeds, and when the seeds sprouted in the crops, they had those roots in there that were completely different from the crop yield. They actually held in water in those areas and allowed the bacteria to build up. And when there's large amounts of roots, large roots, not small roots for the crops, but large roots, you start getting mycelium, which actually holds even more water in. And it really does increase your crop yields, but it doesn't happen overnight. It's an investment, just like any other investment thing. It's an investment overnight that really, you're not going to get rich quick. It doesn't happen like that. And so you really got to think long term, especially it's almost compounding interest, but on ground, on the soil. And I can't believe nobody talks about this. It shouldn't be about politics, right versus left, or contrarian thinking, just thinking the opposite. Well, I don't agree with that, not that. Instead, it should be convergent thinking, taking parts from everybody's ideas and combining it. Because that's where it starts, with convergent thinking, that starts making investments like these. Because investments, it's not just the houses or the different stocks, bonds, all these different things. It's also the planet we live on, and we need to start thinking about it more from an investor's perspective, and having scientists as our analysts, funny enough, and that concept could actually work. It's not going to make money right away. It's not. To be honest, it's not going to make money for the first 5 years, because you need to let those trees and mycelium grow. But just, oh my goodness, just think about the crop yield. When you have that, you'll have to use less water. So think about it. All that drinkable water that we're throwing on crops, we could start using it more for people instead. And we could actually have those, like in Chicago, we have all that water from Lake Michigan. Some of it has to be purified, and then we drink it. We have really good clean water, but we also have to use a ton of that for the corn. And we have those long irrigation that spread from Chicago and that area down Illinois into the different farming areas, and it takes a while to get there. But if those farming areas have to use less water and they produce more food because they have those trees and things there to catch the rainwater, just think about that. Now you could have higher density population and for less resources, less water. So all those buildings that need all that water, and now there's going to be no shortages or anything. Now you're actually going to be in a surplus. And when cities have surplus of resources, they start making those expansions. And that really helps. Especially, it's such an investment that's so underrated. I think it's crazy. And it's not only just for that, but it has to do with technologies just in general, like for batteries, with the acids and it destroying the environment. I think oil is necessary, and this is probably more controversial, but I think oil is necessary for the economy to function. I don't think you can just get rid of it. It doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. And the people that say stop oil and all this stuff, watch what happens. You'll have no plastic, no utensils, no way to make a lot of the things, a lot of the products that you need to manufacture are made in plastic. If you just get rid of all that, you have nothing. You have to understand that for you to make an investment, you have to first look at the effects that it does over the thing. And if you're looking at investing in the environment, getting rid of oil, that ain't possible. Even if you transition over a long period of time to get rid of oil, our entire economic structure is based off of oil. And that's just not possible. But I think what the oil companies do get wrong is how they drill the oil. They do it so sloppy. I mean, sometimes they don't, there's those oil drills, right? And they have the oil come up and then they have it splatter and then they start sucking it up, and they have the natural gas coming out and they have to burn it on top. That's bad for the environment, but it's necessary for economic function that people don't understand with this stuff in it. To put it simple, you need oil for economic function, and really to start getting rid of that, you have to start investing in battery technology, which we barely have. We generate most of our electricity from burning fossil fuels. We still do. We don't even use that many solar panels to generate electricity. We need to start with infrastructure before we start getting rid of infrastructure. We have to create more infrastructure. And if you think about the CO2 in the atmosphere, it's less than 0.1%. And it's really not the CO2 that's damaging it. It's everything else that the CO2 carries in it. And a lot of environmentalists get this wrong. And you need to think about it from everybody's perspective and have convergent thinking, because you can't just get rid of oil. You can't get rid of it. The economy, the entire United States economy is based off of that. Even our treasury bills are paid. Some of the yields are paid because of the oil. Because of the government leasing the land to the oil companies to make the money. And they have the taxes and everything to be able to pay the T-bills. And if you just get rid of oil, the entire economy collapses. And it's going to be hard to recover because of that. Because we rely on so many things to make our oil that it's crazy. You need it for medicine too. You need petroleum, which is the refined version, to make medicine. So if you get rid of oil, you get rid of medicine too. And really, if you want to start helping the environment, you cannot just yell in people's faces and tell them to change. And that's really the basis of it, especially when you get rid of oil. It doesn't work like that. It destroys economies. And then with the battery technology right now is so brand new. It's actually more dangerous for the environment to produce a battery than it is to produce a gas car. And that's gonna change, but I think right now electric cars are also terrible for the environment. Because what happens when your battery breaks? You gotta put it somewhere. You cannot use those batteries because the charge on the metal has been used up with the acid, because the battery has to complete the circuit. If it can't complete the circuit because the fundamental battery is broken, it's useless. And you have to throw that out. It's thrown in landfills and stuff. Even with like Tesla batteries and stuff. It really just starts about thinking from every side. It's critical thinking at its finest. And really, if you want to save the environment, think about it like an investment, not as it's imminent death, because it's not. Because at the end of the day, nature's gonna reset itself, whether we're in it or not. And I think we gotta think about it like an investment, and not like we're gonna die. And it's crazy. I mean, it starts as an investment, and it's just the convergent thinking that lacks in schools especially. And really, if you want to change the environment, be careful, because think about it from philosophical standpoint. If you just start yelling at somebody that they're gonna die in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years because of the environment, if you're not gonna prove anything to them or not show anything, they're not gonna listen. And if you're forceful on them, they'll actually hate you. And think about it like this: when you piss people off, they can vote. You gotta keep that in mind. Anybody can vote. And so if you start leaving a bad taste on people because of your ideology, people are gonna vote against that. That you need to be a convergent thinker. You can't just be right or left. Oh, you gotta do this. You have to do this. Oh, you have to. No, we gotta come up with pros and cons, ideas and solutions, not this politician crap. I mean, you gotta think about like a philosopher and investor. You gotta have science in there, definitely. But I think before you even can incorporate science, you have to incorporate the mind and actually being able to do that kind of stuff that I just think isn't there. Especially with these protesters. You don't solve anything by ruining everyday people's life. Especially with the people that block the road, like in the UK, to stop oil. People are only gonna use the stuff even more. You piss them off, and now they gas the car to pass you, and they just burnt even more oil. Oh my god, it's crazy. And so it really just starts with slow philosophy that it's funny, but it's the convergent thinking that we don't have, and I really think that's where investing in the environment starts. It doesn't start with politics, it starts with convergent thinking. The convergent thinking that we need. And really, if you listen this much, you probably got smarter. Even though I'm not the best scientist, but I'm gonna leave some sources in there for why the regenerative farming produces more yields. And thank you for this.